Does this sound like you? You're extremely generous, a very giving person. You identify as something like the fixer, hero, the protector, or basically like the rock for your friends or your family. And you genuinely love that role. But you find yourself feeling emotionally drained a lot of the time. You notice that you give a little bit too much of yourself and ignore what you need. And you just eventually get to a point where you're fighting for that second wind. And then when you finally find it, you eventually use that second wind to pretty much repeat what you just did and give all of yourself to everyone but you. You just find it difficult to prioritize yourself at all because you love the people that you love and you want them to feel loved by you. You like being that rock. You like being that person that they know that they can count on. You like providing that sense of security to the people that you love. But if you're like me, you find yourself eventually in this broken mess of a state where you're angry and you have these emotional outbursts. You might even forget to take care of yourself. Maybe you don't brush your teeth. Maybe you forget or just don't have the energy to bathe or get out of bed or just nourish yourself for the day with proper food and water, which then furthers the state that you end up in where you feel just kind of empty because now you're not even being cared for. And it can just lead to a lot of negative mental states. If this sounds like you at all, I honestly think I can help you find a balance. One that doesn't make it feel like you're being cold to the people that you care so much for. And so you don't feel like you're being selfish by taking care of yourself at the same time. Hey everyone, welcome back. Or if you're joining me for the first time, I'm John Wetz and this is Spirituality U. On this channel, I talk about spirituality, personal growth, mental health, the law of attraction, and a few other offshoots of those topics that at some point I'll get into them as well. If this is your kind of thing and you feel like you have a good connection with me, I'd love it if you leave me a like and subscribe on this video. This helps me help other people that might resonate with this kind of information. So let's talk about first why it's actually kind of harder for us and maybe even offensive to some of us to prioritize ourselves above others. Many of us honestly just struggle with this feeling that there's something selfish about putting ourselves first. Like something we were brought up with or just something in our life has told us that doing anything for ourselves or putting ourselves above anyone else is a selfish thing, which we equate, selfishness with something that's not good. We see it as this negative trait, which, I don't want to say up for debate, but sometimes you got to be a little bit selfish. I'm sure you've heard the whole thing of, you can't pour from an empty cup. You got to fill your cup up first kind of thing, or the whole airplane thing where, in this event of an emergency, help people put on their mask after putting on yours first only. It makes sense, but we still end up with this like Superman or Superwoman approach, some of us do, where we feel like we need to help others first no matter what, and just suffer in silence and sit with our issues, our needs, our desires, and put them on the back seat. Somehow we believe this is the best choice for us. This, honestly, for a lot of us, I think comes from a deep belief that if we make others the priority, they're going to feel more loved by us. They're going to see just how special they are. And I've said it before, but a lot of us get this idea of the sacrificial hero type love a lot of times from the media we consume, where we see somebody either in a TV show or hear about them in a song where they sacrifice their own health and happiness for their loved ones, and see them get this like glorified perception in return from those they love. So we see them getting love back in the way that we kind of want, but we see what they have to do to get it as basically just giving them themselves endlessly. We also get to see the loved ones of that sacrificial hero come to the realization of just how loved they are and how special they are to that hero in whatever it is we're watching or listening to, which all we're really wanting is our loved ones to feel special to us and know that they are loved. But what we don't talk about and don't really consider is when we are broken down, the way we act, the way we show up for our loved ones, the way we interact with them or don't interact with them at all. We either shut down in one of normally about 3 ways. There's a little bit of variance to these, but in general, we either shut down entirely, where we're just no help to anyone. We're not really detrimental in the sense of we're not actively hurting anyone and not being mean or hurtful in any kind of emotional way. We're just very reclusive, quiet, and giving off this wounded vibe that, whether we want to admit it or not, is noticed by the people that love us, that we've been trying so desperately to make sure they stay happy. But our low vibe and our misery is bringing them down and starting to make them feel bad, which is the whole point of why we ended up miserable to begin with, because we were trying to prevent that. Or we kind of go the other direction and we're not so quiet about it at all. Instead, we start becoming very selfish, like actively selfish, because we never get what we want. We never get what we need. No one thinks about us. No one ever does anything for us. We have to fight for what we get. No one does for us what we do for them. And we become this very victim mentality. We make mountains out of stupid shit, like not being able to go to the restaurant that we want to, because we feel like we are just literally deprived of everything we want, because we just give so much of ourselves. We expect it to come back, and it doesn't come back in the way we're expecting it to all the time. So when we feel like we don't ever get what we want, we kind of overcorrect and become overly demanding, and just oftentimes can trample over our loved ones to get what we need and want, because we're at that breaking point. And in this, we're acting like a big bag of assholes, and then we see what we've done, we start to overcorrect to the other direction and be like, oh, well, let me fix this. And we just give off this toxic ass behavior over and over and over. And sometimes it goes in its own cycle as well, where we then try to give so much of ourselves again to make up for it, but then we end up in that low, crappy place again, and it just becomes this tiring cycle, both for us and our loved ones, because they don't know which one they're going to get. Are they going to get the one that's overly selfish now and blaming them because they don't give as much as we do? Or are they going to get the loving one that they've come to know and love as well, that is bending over backwards for them normally, but has its limits? And the third is basically in the middle of these two, where you're not actively trying to, just be selfish, but you're also not decisive either. It's like you have this inability to decide anything, and the others in our life just can't win. They are willing to compromise and give us what we want, but we feel too guilty to take what we want. We feel like we're being a burden. And so we just kind of end up in this unpleasable state where no one can win. We can't win. The people that love us can't win. And we just make everyone crazy. So what can we do to stop this? Because we seem like we're kind of out of options at this point. We feel guilty if we do anything for ourselves. It's like we're being too selfish. At the same time, when we just endlessly give, we run out of energy to give, and then we either shut down or become toxic in the process of trying to get what we want, because we were deprived for so long because of our own thought patterns and our own hang-ups with our own happiness. The way that I went about stopping this was realizing just how unhelpful and hurtful I was when I was in that broken down phase. Like, I was helpful in bursts. I'd give and I'd give and I'd give. And sometimes I would give like this for weeks, if not months at a time. And then I'd go into this recovery state for weeks at a time sometimes. And during that depleted state, I couldn't do anything for anyone. And, best case scenario, I was just unhelpful. Worst case scenario, I was actually causing damage to the relationships I was in and making it hard to make them happy again, because they learned they couldn't trust me because I was kind of unpredictable. And it wasn't through their own doing, it was through my own inability to control myself and recognize my own needs and wants. So I started a debate with myself. Is it better to be helpful a lot of the time and then useless or slightly hurtful other times? Or is it better for me to have like a balance there where every day I'm helpful, but not to the point that I have days where I can't be helpful anymore. And yes, this is basically just the whole can't pour from a cup half full or an empty cup kind of thing. You got to fill your own cup first. But I feel this is kind of putting it in a way that makes it seem a little more selfless, and maybe it's easier to digest for those of us out there that struggle with feeling like we're being selfish if we do anything for ourselves. When we don't have to go into those long depleted states, we get to a point where we can be more helpful in a sustained way. We don't have to deal with that low, gloomy vibe. We don't have to become toxic. We don't have to be depressing to be around for people. A lot of us think the only way to be helpful is by being actively helpful. And we really discredit the whole idea of being passive helpful by just being us and being a more positive, uplifting, happy person to be around. We can be this like positive lighthouse standing there as an inspiration to those we love, who just see us beaming with this love and light energy around us, motivating them to be similar. Positive energy can be very contagious if we let it be. We smile, we keep the energy brighter and lighter, and people just feel better in our presence. I'm sure you can relate to that. Like, you've probably been around somebody before that they just felt taxing to be around. The energy around them just felt heavy, and you couldn't wait to get away from them. Not because they did anything wrong necessarily. It was just, you got a bad vibe. Likewise, I'm sure you've been around people that every time you're around them, you just feel happy. You feel more alive. They just bring this happiness up in you that you can't really explain either. It has to do with the energy that these people are putting out. So think about that a lot when you realize that you're going into that depleted state. Is it better for you to be this happy person to be around that people can literally feel this happy energy from you? Or is it better to feel a lot of good energy and be very actively helpful, but then be this unpleasant source of energy to be around when you've spent yourself too much? If you're trying to be more active helpful 100% of the time, maybe dial that back to like 60 or 70% of the time be active helpful. Things like taking real physical action, like whether it's just an errand for them, a chore, or cooking, or anything that requires actual action from you. And then the remainder of that time, be passive helpful. Just be you. Split that time and take the time to do things that you want to do and need to do for no other reason than it makes you happy. You can do this with other people, or you can do it alone. But listen to the music you want to listen to. Go where you want to go. Do what you want to do. Someone I listen to a lot is Doughty. He's another YouTuber on here. Really awesome guy with a lot of really, honestly, life-changing videos out there. He helped me a lot on my path. He talks a lot about making sure that we are just 51% in service to others. Try to imagine a version of you where 51% of the time you are in service to others. The other 49%, you're taking care of you. But the thing is with this, when you're in that 49% of taking care of yourself, you're still going to casually interact with other people, whether it's people you know or strangers at the store. You're still going to talk to people. You're still going to have phone calls. You're still going to have some kind of interaction. When you're in that happier state and actually taking care of yourself, you're going to be more likely to just say hi to random people. I can't tell you how many times, because I've kept myself in like a higher vibe state, I've remembered to just be a decent person and ask the poor person at the drive-thru when I, ordering fast food or something, when they say, hello, how are you? I'll just say, how are you back? And you can tell like an uplifting tone in their voice, like they haven't been asked that in a few hours or something. Like I can tell oftentimes just a total change in their demeanor from that simple question of showing that somebody is actually listening to them and not just there to order food. Ultimately that's what you're there for, but you're still being a person. It's not so mechanical at that point, and they feel like they're actually making some kind of little connection with you. I've actually had people just seem like that brighten their whole day up. It's amazing what such a small interaction can do. So the thing is, like, when you're in that happier state and you don't end up in that broken place, Everyone wins. You win. Your loved ones win. Strangers win. Everyone gets a better version of you. And oftentimes, all you need to do is just be you and be in your happy vibe. Because honestly, like, energy is contagious. It truly is. Not a lot of people really pay that much attention to it because it's kind of like air. You don't see it, you kind of forget it's there, but you need it. You deal with it all the time, but you're not consciously thinking of it unless you're not getting it. Same thing with like good and bad energy. A lot of us don't realize that it's there and being exchanged just from body language or just in general being close proximity to people. But I've honestly learned that there is something to that. I used to justify those bad days I had where I was depressed and more negative source of energy for people with the whole, well, if they can't handle me at my worst, they don't deserve me at my best kind of thing. Truth is, I couldn't even handle me at my worst. I legitimately couldn't. My worst made me so mad at myself because I saw how hurtful I was to those that I loved that I never wanted to hurt ever. I only wanted to make their lives better. But because I got to that down state, I didn't always bring good to their life. And that made me feel worse about myself. Ultimately, it was just kind of a shitty defense mechanism that I had to avoid looking at the shitty parts of me that I wasn't ready to deal with. But once I got to that point where I was taking care of myself and keeping my mental state in just a much better place, it became easier to look at the parts of me that honestly weren't serving anyone. They weren't serving me and they weren't serving my loved ones. They were just there, and it was easier for me to be like, you gotta deal with this because it's just who I am. It wasn't who I was, and it wasn't who I was happy with being. It was just something that became kind of comfortable to be in, I guess, even though it wasn't really comfortable. It was easier than admitting to myself that I'm kind of an asshole at times, and I need to fix this. I know there's a lot of debate on whether or not it's good to be that people pleaser or that person that everyone counts on kind of thing. Like, it can lead to unhealthy relationships. Where I'm at right now in my life, though, I honestly enjoy that about myself. I enjoy being the person that my friends and family go to, knowing that I'm seen, or at least somebody that they know they can trust to kind of, step up to the plate when it's needed. It's something I like about myself. And I'm guessing quite a few of you out there probably like that about yourself as well. It's honestly a beautiful thing. Like, it's nothing to be ashamed of at all. But it does sometimes get us to a point where we're not so helpful anymore. But it really helped me to see how unhelpful I was being and how destructive I could be when I entered into that depleted state. Because it helped me to see that it wasn't so selfish to take care of myself. Because when I don't enter in that state, I'm able to be this more consistent source of light and love instead of this grab bag of emotions that varies depending on the day. And it really helped me to see the value I bring to the world just by being a happier version of me. Because then everyone that I interact with, whether I know them or not personally, they get a better interaction. The vibe I carry around is lighter, and people just feel more comfortable around me. I feel more comfortable around me. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you guys liked this video, and I hope you guys got something from it. If you did, I'd love it, like I said before, if you leave me a like and subscribe. This helps me get this information out to other people and help those that it resonates with. So, anyway, love y'all, and I'll catch you guys here soon.